The pain of loss tore through my soul, but the betrayal, oh, the betrayal was the deepest stab. I never imagined that the man who promised to love me would be the same one to take everything from me. But fate has a cruel way of showing us that, sometimes, the greatest ruin is the beginning of an unshakable strength. The sun rose lazily over the small town of Clearwater Creek, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink that reflected in the calm waters of the river. For Maya, every sunrise was a promise of peace, a reminder of the simple, happy life she cherished so much. In her early 20s, her days were filled with caring for the neighborhood children, who adored her, and the company of her grandfather, Old John, a retired former police officer whose wisdom was as vast as the stories he told. The wooden house, with its blue windows and a small flower garden, was Maya's sanctuary. There, every corner held the memory of her mother, who had left too soon, leaving a void that only her grandfather could fill. John was her safe harbor, her counselor, the only family she had left. His eyes, once vigilant and firm, now carried the sweetness of age, but his mind remained sharp, attentive to every detail of life in the town. That morning, however, something broke the serene routine. As she watered the petunias on the porch, Maya saw it. Lying inert in the middle of the dirt road was a pigeon, its gray feathers stained dark red. A shiver ran down her spine. She wasn't superstitious, but the image of the dead bird, so close to her home, brought a premonition of bad luck, a cold shadow that stretched over the warmth of the morning sun. "Grandpa, come see this," she called, her voice choked with an apprehension she couldn't explain. John, who was in the kitchen preparing coffee, came to the porch, his steps slow and steady. His eyes scanned the pigeon, and a heavy sigh escaped his lips. "Bad luck, my granddaughter." "It's a warning," he murmured, his voice grave. "But don't worry, what's meant to be will be. And we'll be ready." Despite her grandfather's reassuring words, the incident left Maya uneasy. She tried to push the thought away, focusing on the day's tasks. Later, as she helped the children pick fruit in the orchard, a smile returned to her lips. The innocence and joy of the little ones were a balm for her soul. It was that same day that Jesse, the neighbor, appeared. Jesse was a man of few words, with a complicated past that the whole town knew about. He had served time for a youthful mistake, but since his return, he had worked hard in the small auto repair shop he inherited from his father, trying to rebuild his life. His eyes, though often shadowed, held a gentle sparkle when he looked at Maya. He always brought a small gift, a wild flower, a fresh fruit, and his gestures, though awkward, were filled with sincere affection. "Maya," he said, extending a wild rose. "For you. It smells of hope." She accepted the flower, feeling a warmth in her chest. Jesse was good, in his own way. But there was something about him, a deep melancholy, that prevented her from seeing him as anything more than a friend. Days later, the town received an unexpected visitor. A luxury car, a rare sight in Clearwater Creek, pulled up in front of Maya's house. A tall man, with dark hair and piercing eyes, stepped out of the vehicle. He introduced himself as Caleb, a tourist interested in exploring the region and, perhaps, buying a house nearby. His voice was smooth, his smile captivating. He exuded an urban charm that was a striking contrast to the simplicity of the town. "I heard you rent rooms to visitors," he said to John, who received him with the usual suspicion of a former police officer. Maya watched from a distance, feeling a curiosity she hadn't experienced in a long time. Caleb was different. Their eyes met for an instant, and a blush rose to Maya's face. There was something about him, a magnetic energy that seemed to promise an adventure, a detour from her quiet life. Caleb stayed in the guest room, and his presence brought a new dynamic to the house. He was polite, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in John's stories and Maya's life. They spent hours talking on the porch, under the starry sky, and Maya found herself increasingly enchanted by him. He spoke of a world she only knew from books, of big cities and opportunities, and she caught herself dreaming of a different life, by his side. The budding romance blossomed under the Clearwater Creek sun, but the shadow of the dead pigeon still lingered. Caleb, with his charm and promises, seemed too good to be true. And, indeed, he was. The first meeting with the town residents was called by a representative of a large real estate corporation, accompanied by Caleb. The small community hall was packed, and the tension was palpable. The representative, a suited man with a forced smile, began to speak of a development project for the region, a luxury venture that would bring progress and opportunities. Then came the proposal. They offered paltry sums for the houses, far below their actual value. The veiled threat was clear: either they sold, or they would be forced out. Caleb's voice, once so sweet and welcoming, now echoed in the room, explaining the benefits of the sale, as if he were one of them. Maya felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. The man she was falling in love with was part of it all. That gaze, once so gentle, now seemed cold and calculating. The threat of demolishing the town, of destroying the home of so many families, including her own, became real. The premonition of bad luck materialized, not as an isolated event, but as a storm brewing on the horizon, ready to sweep away everything Maya knew and loved. The personal betrayal, the pain of seeing the man who had enchanted her reveal himself as an enemy, was just the beginning. The meeting ended in a murmur of indignation and despair. The residents of Clearwater Creek, once united by the simplicity of their lives, now found themselves confronted by a threat that seemed invincible. Maya felt her heart heavy, not only from the imminent loss of her home, but from the betrayal that consumed her. Caleb, the man who had awakened long dormant feelings in her, had revealed himself to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. "We cannot accept this." John's voice echoed in the small town square, where the residents had gathered after the meeting. "Our land, our homes, that's our history. We won't give it up for nothing to these vultures." Her grandfather's speech, filled with a strength Maya thought he had lost with age, ignited a flame of resistance in the neighbors' hearts. They refused to sell. The town, once an oasis of peace, transformed into a silent battlefield, where the unity of its residents was the only weapon against the corporation's greed. Caleb, for his part, tried to approach Maya. His eyes, once so full of seductive sparkle, now seemed to carry a burden, a shadow of guilt. "Maya, please, listen to me," he pleaded, trying to hold her hand. "It's not as simple as it looks. I can explain." But Maya recoiled, the pain of betrayal stronger than any curiosity. "Explain what, Caleb? That you approached me, my family, my town with a plan to destroy us? That every word you spoke was a lie? There's no explanation for that." Her words were cutting, filled with deep resentment. She could no longer see the charming man who had enchanted her, only the corporation's agent threatening her world. The following days were marked by growing tension. The corporation did not hesitate to show its claws. Thugs, large and menacing men, began to circle the town. At first, it was just intimidating glances, whispered threats. Then came the incidents. Fences were knocked down, small fires in fields, animals let loose. Fear began to spread, eroding the residents' resistance. Jesse, the neighbor, was one of the first to feel the henchman's wrath. His auto repair shop, his livelihood, was vandalized. Tools broken, parts stolen. He appeared at Maya's house, his face etched with anger and helplessness. "They want to break us, Maya. They want to force us to give up," he said in a hoarse voice. "But I won't. I won't." Maya felt the anxiety grow. Every day, the town lost a little of its light. The children, once so joyful, now played in silence, their eyes watchful of any strange movement. Grandpa John tried to keep morale high, organizing watches and meetings to discuss strategies. But the pressure was immense. One night, the worst happened. Maya was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when she heard a noise from the porch. She ran there, her heart pounding, and saw a scene that froze her blood. Two large men with covered faces were attacking her grandfather. John, despite his age, tried to fight back, but it was useless. He fell to the ground, groaning in pain. "Sign these papers, old man, or your granddaughter will pay the price," one of the men growled, pointing a knife at Maya, who was paralyzed with terror. Her grandfather, his face bloody and eyes tearful, looked at Maya. The fear in his eyes was not for himself, but for her. He knew he had no choice. With trembling hands, he took the pen the thug offered him and signed the sales documents, surrendering the last bit of his resistance. The men left, leaving a trail of pain and despair. Maya ran to her grandfather, hugging him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Grandpa, why did you do that?" she sobbed. "I couldn't let them hurt you, my granddaughter," he whispered in a weak voice. "Our house, it's just a piece of wood. You are my life." That night, John couldn't sleep. The physical pain was great, but the pain of humiliation, of being forced to give up what was his, was even greater. Maya cared for him with all her tenderness, but she felt that something had broken in her grandfather. He, who had always been the rock of the family, now seemed a defeated man. A few days later, Maya's grandfather passed away. It wasn't the direct assault that took him, but the sadness, the loss of dignity, the feeling of having failed to protect his home and his granddaughter. Maya felt the world collapse. The only family she had left, her safe harbor, was gone. She was alone, devastated, in the middle of a crumbling town. John's death was the final blow for many residents. Without the old police officer's leadership and strength, the resistance faded. One by one, they succumbed to the pressure, signing the sales documents for paltry sums. The machines arrived. The deafening roar of excavators tore through the town's silence, demolishing homes, dreams, and memories. Maya watched, helpless, as her own house was demolished. The wooden walls that held her mother's memory, the flower garden she tended so carefully, all turned to dust. This home, which was an extension of her soul, was reduced to rubble. She lost her house, her grandfather, her innocence. She felt empty, an echo of herself, wandering among the debris of her life. Amidst this darkness, a new and unexpected truth began to manifest. Maya felt strange, nauseous, with a fatigue she couldn't explain. At first, she attributed the symptoms to stress and profound sadness. But days passed, and the sensation persisted. A discreet visit to the town's midwife confirmed what her heart already suspected, but her mind refused to accept. She was pregnant. Pregnant with Caleb's child. The news hit her like lightning. A mix of shock, anger, and overwhelming fear. How could she be pregnant with the man who had betrayed her, who had destroyed her life? Loneliness enveloped her like a heavy cloak. But, amidst the despair, a small flame of hope and a new motivation began to emerge. This little being inside her was the only thing left of a love she had believed real, and now, it was the only reason to go on. She was no longer alone. She had a child to protect, a legacy to honor. Passivity gave way to fierce determination. She had to fight. Fight for her grandfather, for her community, and now, for her baby. While tidying the few belongings she had managed to save from the rubble of her house, Maya found something. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the room Caleb had occupied, there was a small leather-bound notebook. It was his. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside, there were detailed notes about the town residents, their weaknesses, the value of their properties, and complex diagrams that seemed to be part of the expropriation plan. There were also names, dates, and even some transcribed conversations. This notebook was the proof. The proof of fraud, corruption, injustice. It was the weapon she needed. With the notebook in hand and life pulsating within her, Maya made a decision. She would no longer be a victim. She would go to the police. She would seek justice. For her grandfather, for her community, and for her child's future. With Caleb's notebook in hand, Maya felt a mix of fear and newfound courage. This small leather object was the key to unraveling the web of lies and corruption that had destroyed her life. But going to the police, in a city where the corporation's influence seemed omnipresent, was a risk. She knew she had to be careful, but the image of her grandfather, the memory of her ruined home, and the life growing inside her pushed her forward. She sought out Jesse. The neighbor, despite his own suffering and the destruction of his workshop, still held a glimmer of hope in his eyes when it came to Maya. He listened intently, anger rising in his chest with each of her words. "This notebook, it's the proof we need, Maya," Jesse said, his fists clenched. "But the local police, they're bought off. The chief, Chief Miller, has always been friends with Caleb's father. We can't trust them." Jesse's revelation confirmed Maya's worst fears. The corruption ran deeper than she imagined. But that wouldn't make her give up. On the contrary, it only strengthened her resolve. They needed a plan. Meanwhile, Caleb was plunged into his own personal hell. The sight of Maya, her eyes full of pain and accusation, haunted him. The demolition of the town, the residents' despair, the news of Maya's grandfather's death, all weighed on his conscience like a rock. He had been raised in a world of privilege, where power and money dictated the rules, but he had never imagined his actions could cause so much destruction. He tried to justify himself, to convince himself that he was just following orders, that he was a pawn in a larger game. But the image of the dead pigeon Maya had told him about, and the premonition of bad luck she had felt, now seemed a dark omen of his own ruin. He remembered the sparkle in Maya's eyes when she spoke of her home, her grandfather, and guilt gnawed at him. News of Maya's pregnancy reached Caleb indirectly, through one of the henchmen still lurking in the town. At first, he refused to believe it. It wasn't possible. But the image of Maya, so fragile yet so strong, pregnant with his child, struck him with overwhelming force. This baby, the fruit of a love he had betrayed, was living proof of his failure, but also a chance for redemption. He knew his father-in-law, the unscrupulous businessman behind the entire operation, wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone who stood in his way. And now, Maya and his child were in danger because of him. Caleb felt a knot in his throat. He had to do something. He had to right his wrongs, even if it meant turning his back on his own family and the world he knew. Caleb's first action was to confront his father-in-law, the powerful Dr. Augustus Thorne. The luxurious boardroom, with its panoramic city view, seemed a world apart from the ruined town. "Father, what we're doing is wrong," Caleb said, his voice firm, despite the trembling of his hands. "People are suffering. Maya's grandfather died because of this. And she's pregnant." Augustus, a man with a cold face and calculating gaze, merely laughed. "Pregnant? With a country girl? Caleb, don't be naive. It's just a tactic to manipulate you." And as for the old man, he was an obstacle. Obstacles are removed. His father-in-law's coldness shocked Caleb. He had always known Augustus's ambition, but had never imagined such cruelty. The conversation turned into a heated argument, where Caleb tried, in vain, to make his father-in-law understand the humanity behind his plans. Next, Caleb confronted his ex-fiancée, Sophia. She was an elegant woman, accustomed to luxury and control. Caleb had always felt there was something superficial about their relationship, but he had never imagined the extent of her manipulation. "Sophia, I know about Maya. She's pregnant with my child," Caleb said, looking for a reaction, an ounce of humanity. Sophia, with a cynical smile, revealed the truth Caleb could never have imagined. "Oh, the country girl? What a shame. I told you I was pregnant, but it was a lie, Caleb. A lie to keep you by my side, to ensure our marriage. I knew you were getting too close to that girl. And now, you're going to throw everything away for a peasant and a bastard child?" Sophia's words hit Caleb like a punch. The betrayal, the manipulation, the coldness in her voice, it was all too much. He realized he had been living a lie, surrounded by people who only cared about power and appearances. He left her, feeling a mix of disgust and a strange sense of liberation. With his family ties severed and his conscience awakened, Caleb knew he had to act. He contacted a trusted lawyer, Ms. Helen Davies, a woman known for her integrity and her fight for justice. He told her everything, showing her the internal documents he had secretly collected, the evidence of his father-in-law's illegal schemes. "This is serious, Caleb," Ms. Davies said, her face grim as she reviewed the documents. "Your father-in-law is a powerful man. This will be a difficult battle. But with your testimony and these documents, we have a chance." Caleb knew the risks. He would be turning against his own family, against the world he had always known. But the image of Maya, pregnant and alone, and the memory of John's death, fueled his determination. He was ready to face whatever came. Meanwhile, Maya and Jesse, with the notebook in hand, decided to take a risk. They traveled to the state capital, Springfield, seeking help from a non-profit organization that defended the rights of rural communities. There, they met Ms. Davies, who was already preparing the case against Dr. Thorne's corporation. The meeting between Maya and Caleb at Ms. Davies' office was tense. Maya's eyes, once full of love, now held a mixture of anger, pain, and a glimmer of hope. Caleb, for his part, looked at her with deep remorse, his face etched with the weight of his actions. "Maya, I know I hurt you," Caleb said, his voice trembling. "But I'm here to fix things. To fight for you, for our child, for your town." Maya listened, her heart torn. The pain was still raw, but the sincerity in his eyes, the evidence he had brought, began to break through her defenses. She saw a changed man, a man willing to sacrifice everything for justice. "You have to prove it, Caleb," Maya said, her voice firm. "Prove that you've truly changed. Prove that you're on our side." And so, an unlikely alliance was formed. Maya, the victim, Caleb, the repentant betrayer, Jesse, the loyal friend, and Ms. Davies, the unwavering lawyer. Together, they would face the powerful Dr. Thorne, seeking justice for Clearwater Creek and a new future for Maya and her child. The battle was just beginning, but for the first time, Maya felt a glimmer of hope that they could win. The alliance forged in Ms. Davies' office was an unusual one, but it was the only path to justice for Clearwater Creek. Maya, Caleb, Jesse, and Ms. Davies began to work tirelessly, gathering more evidence, interviewing former residents, and building a solid case against Dr. Thorne's corporation. Caleb, with his insider knowledge, was invaluable. He revealed hidden accounts, shell companies, and the names of corrupt officials, including Chief Miller, who had been on Dr. Thorne's payroll for years. The investigation uncovered a vast network of illegal activities, from fraudulent land acquisitions to environmental violations. Ms. Davies meticulously organized every piece of evidence, preparing for a legal battle that promised to be long and arduous. She knew that Dr. Thorne would not give up easily. He was a man who wielded immense power and influence. Meanwhile, Maya's pregnancy was progressing, bringing with it a mix of emotions. The initial shock and anger began to give way to a profound connection with the life growing inside her. She felt the baby's movements, heard its heartbeat during ultrasounds, and slowly, a maternal love began to blossom, replacing some of the bitterness. Caleb was by her side for every appointment, his presence a constant reminder of his commitment to her and their child. He was attentive, caring, and genuinely remorseful, trying to make amends for his past actions. Jesse, the loyal friend, remained Maya's rock. He provided emotional support, helped with the investigation, and ensured her safety. He watched Caleb with a wary eye, but slowly, he began to see the genuine change in him. Jesse's protective instincts were always on high alert, especially as the threats from Dr. Thorne's remaining henchmen began to intensify. Dr. Thorne, realizing that his empire was crumbling, became more desperate and dangerous. He sent veiled threats to Ms. Davies, Maya, and even Caleb, trying to intimidate them into dropping the case. His lawyers launched countersuits, attempting to discredit Maya and Caleb, painting them as disgruntled individuals seeking revenge. The media, initially hesitant, began to pick up on the story, drawn by the drama of a powerful corporation versus a small, devastated community. One evening, as Maya and Jesse were leaving Ms. Davies' office in Springfield, they started to feel like they were being followed. Vigilant glances at every street corner, suspicious cars parked near Helen's office. The fear, which had been temporarily replaced by hope, began to haunt them again. Caleb, for his part, was increasingly isolated. His family considered him a traitor. His friends, who once surrounded him, now avoided him. He felt alone, but with every piece of evidence he gathered, with every step he took to reveal the truth, he felt a spark of peace. He knew he was on the right track. He decided he couldn't wait any longer. He had to find Maya, he had to protect her. He knew his father-in-law wouldn't hesitate to harm her to silence her. Caleb used his contacts, his knowledge of the city's underground information world, to track her down. One evening, as Maya and Jesse were leaving Ms. Davies' office, they were confronted by two large men. The tension was palpable. Jesse, with his sharpened protective instincts, placed Maya behind him. "You're coming with us," one of the men said in a deep voice. Suddenly, a black car screeched to a halt beside them. The door opened, and Caleb stepped out, his face etched with worry and determination. "Leave them alone," Caleb shouted, placing himself between Maya and the henchman. "She has nothing to do with this. I'm responsible." The henchman hesitated, surprised by Caleb's appearance. They knew who he was, the boss's son. But orders were clear. One of them pulled out a weapon. The confrontation was imminent. Maya, her heart pounding, looked at Caleb, the man who had betrayed her, now risking his own life to protect her. The remorse in his eyes was visible, and a small crack of hope opened in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, he had truly changed. The night air of the capital city was charged with dangerous electricity. The two henchmen, surprised by Caleb's sudden appearance, hesitated for a moment, but their boss's order was clear: eliminate the obstacles. The man who had drawn the weapon pointed it directly at Caleb, who stood firm, shielding Maya and Jesse. "You won't do this," Caleb said, his voice low but imbued with an authority Maya had never seen in him. "Not for a man who only cares about money. You know this is wrong." The henchman's hesitation was visible. He knew Caleb, knew his position within the corporation, even if he was now disgraced. But the other henchman, more impulsive, lunged at Jesse, who was ready to fight. It was a chaotic few seconds. Jesse, with the agility of a man who had overcome many dangers before, dodged the attack and retaliated with a precise blow. Caleb, taking advantage of the confusion, disarmed the henchman holding the weapon. A gunshot echoed in the street, but it hit the ground, not anyone. Police sirens, already en route thanks to a discreet call from Ms. Davies, began to wail in the distance. The henchman, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, fled in a waiting car around the corner, disappearing into the night's darkness. Maya, her heart still pounding, looked at Caleb. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, all the pain and anger she had felt for him were replaced by overwhelming relief. He had protected her. He had risked his life for her. "Are you okay?" Caleb asked in a hoarse voice, his eyes fixed on hers. "Yes," Maya whispered, still processing what had happened. "Thank you, Caleb." Jesse, out of breath, approached. "You're crazy, Caleb." "But thank you." The arrival of the police brought a new level of complication. They were taken to the precinct to give statements. Caleb, using his influence and knowledge of the system, ensured that the story was recorded in a way that protected Maya and Jesse, while he took most of the responsibility for the confrontation. He knew he was putting himself in a dangerous situation, but he didn't care. At the precinct, Caleb finally had the opportunity to speak to Maya alone. He told her everything: his father-in-law's manipulation, Sophia's lie, his own remorse, and the decision to reveal the truth. He showed her the evidence he had collected, the internal documents, the emails. "I know nothing I say will erase the pain I caused you, Maya," he said, his eyes welling up with tears. "But I swear I'll make it up to you. For you, for our child, and for everyone in Clearwater Creek." Maya listened, her heart aching. The pain of betrayal was still raw, but the sincerity in his eyes, the way he had risked himself to protect her, began to break down the barriers she had erected. The mention of our child tightened her chest. He knew. He accepted. "I found your notebook," Maya revealed, pulling it from her bag. "It was my motivation to come here." Caleb took the notebook, and a sad smile appeared on his lips. "I left it there on purpose, Maya. I wanted you to know the truth, even if I didn't have the courage to tell you." Ms. Helen Davies, who had accompanied them to the precinct, was impressed by the quantity and quality of the evidence Caleb had gathered. "With this, we have a very strong case," she confirmed. "But Dr. Thorne won't give up easily. He'll fight back." And she was right. News of the confrontation and Caleb's involvement reached Dr. Thorne. He was furious, feeling betrayed by his own son. "He chose the wrong side," Thorne growled, his eyes full of hatred. "He will regret it bitterly." From that day on, the battle became even more intense. Caleb, Maya, and Jesse, with Ms. Davies' support, formed an unlikely alliance. They worked tirelessly, gathering more evidence, seeking witnesses, and preparing the ground for a legal battle that promised to be epic. Caleb, now an outcast in his own world, dedicated himself body and soul to the cause. He used his inside knowledge of the corporation to expose every layer of the conspiracy, revealing the corruption of Chief Miller and other involved officials. With each new discovery, the network of illegalities became clearer. Maya, meanwhile, felt the strength of the baby growing inside her. The pregnancy, once a burden of loneliness, was now a source of strength. She became the voice of Clearwater Creek, the embodiment of resistance. Her story, the story of her town, began to gain momentum, attracting the attention of independent media and social activists. The press, which had previously hesitated to challenge a name as powerful as Dr. Thorne, began to sniff out the story. Articles appeared, small at first, but increasingly bold, questioning the corporation's practices and Chief Miller's integrity. Pressure on Dr. Thorne and his accomplices mounted daily. They tried to intimidate Maya and Caleb by sending new threats, but the duo was determined. Caleb, with Jesse's help, installed security systems and took precautions to protect Maya and the baby. The final confrontation was approaching. The truth was coming out, and justice, though still distant, seemed more accessible than ever. Maya and Caleb, united by a common goal and a love rekindled from the ashes of betrayal, were ready to face whatever came. The alliance between Maya, Caleb, and Jesse, under the strategic guidance of Ms. Helen Davies, transformed into an unstoppable force. They became a tight-knit team, each contributing their skills and knowledge to dismantle Dr. Thorne's empire of lies and corruption. Caleb, with his privileged access to internal information, revealed compromising documents and emails that exposed the extent of the fraud and the names of those involved. Maya, with her story of pain and resilience, gave a voice to the residents of Clearwater Creek, turning personal tragedy into a call for justice. Jesse, with his unwavering loyalty and street smarts, ensured the team's safety and helped gather crucial testimonies. Ms. Davies, meanwhile, was the mastermind behind the legal strategy. She knew the battle would be fought not only in the courts but also in public opinion. She began leaking information to independent media outlets, which, eager for a David and Goliath story, embraced Maya's cause. Investigative reports began to expose Dr. Thorne's corporation's dubious practices, Chief Miller's complicity, and the desolate situation of Clearwater Creek. The media pressure and the threat of a lawsuit began to take effect. Dr. Thorne, accustomed to operating in the shadows, saw his name and reputation publicly tarnished. He tried to retaliate by using his lawyers to threaten the media and those involved, but the situation turned against him. Public opinion, sensitized by Maya's story and the town's destruction, began to turn against him. Despite the progress, danger was constant. Maya and Caleb knew they were dealing with a ruthless man. Threats became more direct, more personal. Caleb, now living in a discreet apartment, far from the luxury of his past life, installed surveillance cameras and reinforced doors. Jesse, with his protective presence, was always nearby, ensuring Maya and the baby's safety. Maya's pregnancy advanced, bringing with it a new level of emotions and vulnerability. Caleb, once a stranger, now proved to be an attentive and devoted partner. He accompanied her to medical appointments, prepared her meals, and spent hours talking to the baby in her womb. With every gesture, every word, he rebuilt the trust he had broken. Maya, though still cautious, felt her heart softening. The love she thought was dead was reborn stronger and more mature amidst adversity. One of the biggest emotional turning points occurred when Caleb, in a moment of deep reflection, revealed a secret to Maya that he had kept for years. "My mother, she was always against my father's business dealings," he confessed, his voice choked. "She tried to warn me, but I was young and naive. She always told me to follow my heart, to do what's right, not what's easy." The revelation brought a new perspective on Caleb, showing that behind the facade of the ambitious heir lay a man with principles that had been stifled by paternal influence. Ms. Davies, with evidence in hand, finally filed the formal complaint against Dr. Thorne's corporation and Chief Miller. The news exploded in the media. The corruption, the illegal expropriation, the violence against residents, everything was revealed. The district attorney's office opened an investigation, and search and seizure warrants were issued. Chief Miller was the first to be arrested. The image of him, handcuffed and pale-faced, was a relief for Maya and all the residents of Clearwater Creek. It was the first step towards justice, the first crack in the wall of impunity that had seemed insurmountable. Miller's arrest triggered a chain of events. Other officials involved in the conspiracy were investigated and arrested. Dr. Thorne's corporation was raided, and its accounts were frozen. The empire he had built on greed and exploitation began to crumble. Dr. Thorne, cornered, tried to flee. But Caleb, anticipating his father's movements, had provided crucial information to the authorities. He knew it would be painful, but it was the price of redemption. The corrupt businessman was intercepted at the airport as he attempted to board a private flight abroad. His arrest was the culmination of the legal battle, a moment of triumph for Maya and all who had fought by her side. News of Dr. Thorne's and his partner's arrest spread like wildfire. The town of Clearwater Creek, once a symbol of desolation, was now a beacon of hope. Residents, who had lost everything, began to glimpse the possibility of a new beginning. Maya, with Caleb by her side, felt an enormous weight lift from her shoulders. Justice had been served. But the fight wasn't over yet. There was the rebuilding, the healing of wounds, the construction of a future for her child and for the community. The arrest of Dr. Thorne and his accomplices resonated throughout the country, bearing witness to the power of truth and the resilience of a community. For Maya, the news brought profound relief, the feeling that justice had finally prevailed. But victory did not erase the scars. The town of Clearwater Creek was still a landscape of rubble, and the pain of losing her grandfather still echoed in her heart. However, there was new hope, a glimmer in the eyes of the residents who began to return, driven by the promise of a new beginning. Caleb, though relieved by his father's arrest, carried the weight of a complex mix of emotions. The pain of family betrayal was real, but the certainty of having done what was right, of having fought for Maya and for their child, filled him with a peace he had never known in his life of privilege. He had lost a father, but he had gained a family, a purpose. Dr. Thorne's company, now under judicial receivership, was undergoing restructuring. Caleb, with the support of Ms. Davies and a newly formed board of directors, took the helm, determined to transform the corporation into a model of ethics and social responsibility. His first and most important decision was clear: the company would commit to rebuilding Clearwater Creek, house by house, with the active participation of the former residents. News of the reconstruction brought a wave of joy and optimism to the town. Residents, who had been scattered by the tragedy, began to return, filled with new energy. This place, once synonymous with pain, was now becoming a symbol of rebirth. Maya, with the support of Caleb and Jesse, led community meetings, discussing plans for the new homes, common spaces, and the revitalization of the river. She was no longer the naive young woman from the beginning of the story, she was a leader, a voice for her community. Maya and Caleb's relationship blossomed amidst this reconstruction. With every brick laid, every tree planted, they were building not only a new home but also the foundation of a solid and mature love. Caleb was the partner she needed, attentive, protective, and, above all, repentant. He dedicated himself to her and the baby with a passion Maya had never imagined. Prenatal appointments became moments of joy and anticipation. Caleb was always present, holding Maya's hand, listening to the baby's heartbeat with a moved smile. He spoke to the child in her womb, promising a future of love and security. With every ultrasound, every movement of the baby, the bond between them strengthened, transforming the pain of the past into a promise of happiness. Jesse, the loyal friend, watched Maya's happiness with a mix of joy and a touch of melancholy. He had loved Maya in his own way, but he knew her heart belonged to Caleb. His redemption came in the form of unwavering friendship and loyalty. He became Caleb's right-hand man in the town's reconstruction, using his practical skills to oversee the work and ensure everything was done with the utmost care and respect for the residents. Caleb's family, or what was left of it, also began to readjust. His mother, who had always disapproved of her husband's dealings, finally found the courage to distance herself from him and support Caleb on his new path. She visited Maya, asking for forgiveness for her husband's actions and expressing her joy for the pregnancy. The acceptance from Caleb's family was an important step for Maya, a sign that she would be welcomed into a new home, into a new life. Caleb's ex-fiancée, Sophia, disappeared from the scene, shamed and isolated by the revelations of her lies and manipulations. Her story served as a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and lack of empathy. The first few months of reconstruction were intense. The work was arduous, but the unity of the residents and the dedication of Caleb and his team transformed the construction site into a symbol of hope. The foundations of the new homes began to be laid, and the sound of hammers and joyful voices replaced the roar of excavators that once demolished dreams. Maya, even with her growing belly, actively participated, planting new saplings in what would be the community garden, discussing with neighbors, sharing ideas. She felt her grandfather's presence in every corner of the town, in every smile of the residents, in every flower that bloomed. He would have been proud. One sunny afternoon, as they watched the sunset over the new foundations, Caleb knelt before Maya. In his hands, there was no diamond ring, but a small wild flower, picked from the field around the town. "Maya," he said, his eyes full of tears and love. "I know I made many mistakes. I caused you immense pain. But you gave me a second chance, a chance to be a better man, a father to our child. You taught me the true meaning of home, family, love. Would you accept to be my wife, to build a new life with me, here, in Clearwater Creek?" Maya, tears in her eyes, did not hesitate. "Yes, Caleb. 1,000 times yes." Their embrace was the seal of a new beginning, of a love that had overcome betrayal, pain, and loss. The town of Clearwater Creek, under reconstruction, bore witness to the rebirth of a family, a community, a hope that seemed to have been lost forever. Maya's yes resonated not only among the foundations of the new homes but also in her own heart, sealing the promise of a future she had never dared to dream of. Caleb's embrace, under the starry sky of Clearwater Creek, was a safe haven, a testament that love, resilience, and forgiveness could blossom even on the most devastated grounds. The small wild flower, now in her hands, was worth more than any jewel, for it represented the purity and truth of a feeling that had overcome pain and betrayal. The following months were marked by intense activity and contagious joy. The reconstruction of Clearwater Creek progressed rapidly, driven by Caleb's energy and the enthusiastic participation of the residents. The new homes, designed with care and attention to the community's needs, began to take shape, replacing rubble with solid walls and colorful roofs. The river, once polluted and forgotten, was revitalized, and a new community park, with fruit trees and a playground for children, began to be planned. Maya, with her increasingly prominent belly, was the soul of the town. She coordinated meetings, listened to neighbors' suggestions, and ensured that her grandfather's memory was honored in every detail of the new project. The strength she radiated was inspiring, and the community saw her not only as a victim who had risen but as the leader who had guided them toward a better future. Caleb, meanwhile, dedicated himself tirelessly to his new company and the town's reconstruction. He had severed all ties with his father's corrupt past, transforming the corporation into a model of social responsibility. He invested in sustainable projects, employed town residents, and ensured that every step of the reconstruction was transparent and ethical. Caleb's redemption was visible in every action, in every smile he shared with Maya and the neighbors. Jesse, the loyal friend, remained a pillar of support. He oversaw the construction, ensured the town's security, and was Maya and Caleb's confidant. His presence was a constant reminder of the strength of friendship and the importance of having people to trust, especially in the most difficult moments. Caleb's family, particularly his mother, had embraced Maya with tenderness. Grandma's visits were always a cause for celebration, and little John was showered with all the love the family had saved. Maya, who had lost her mother so early and her grandfather so tragically, finally found the fullness of a large and loving family, who welcomed her with open arms. Amidst all this excitement, Maya and Caleb began planning the wedding. They wanted a simple ceremony, right in the town, with the presence of all the residents and friends who had supported them. It would be a celebration not only of their love but of Clearwater Creek's resilience, the triumph of justice, and hope. However, not everything was rosy. The shadow of the past still lingered, though weakened. Dr. Thorne's lawyers, in a last desperate attempt, tried to overturn some judicial decisions, alleging irregularities in the process. Ms. Davies, always vigilant, ensured that every maneuver was quickly countered, protecting the victory they had achieved with so much effort. Furthermore, some of Dr. Thorne's former henchmen, who had managed to escape prison, still posed a latent threat. Jesse, with his experience, remained vigilant, ensuring that the town's security was reinforced, especially as the baby's birth and the wedding approached. One night, as Maya and Caleb walked through the town, inspecting the work on the new homes, an incident reminded them of the fragility of the newly acquired peace. A dark car sped past, and an object was thrown toward them. It was a stone, wrapped in a threatening note, with the signature of one of the escaped henchmen. The message was clear: "You're not safe. It's not over." Fear, for a moment, tightened Maya's heart again. But Caleb hugged her tightly, his eyes full of determination. "We won't let them intimidate us, Maya. Not now. Not after everything we've been through." Jesse, who was nearby, saw the incident and acted quickly. He intensified surveillance, activated his contacts, and ensured that the local police, now under new leadership and free from corruption, were aware of the threat. The community, united, also mobilized, forming a network of support and protection. Despite the challenges, Maya and Caleb did not allow fear to overshadow the joy of their new beginning. They knew that life was made of struggles, but that together, they were invincible. The baby in her womb was the greatest proof of this, a symbol of hope and renewal that pushed them forward, to build a future where love and justice would prevail over greed and malice. The wedding date was set. It would be a day of celebration, of union, of a new chapter for Maya, Caleb, and the entire town of Clearwater Creek. The promise of a home, a family, and a rebuilt community was about to come true, and they were ready to embrace that future with all the love and hope they had cultivated amidst adversity. The threat of the note, though unsettling, failed to shake Maya and Caleb's determination. On the contrary, it served as a catalyst, strengthening the community's unity and Jesse's vigilance. The police, now acting with integrity, intensified the search for the escaped henchmen, ensuring that security in Clearwater Creek was a priority. The town, once an easy target, transformed into a bastion of resistance and solidarity. The days leading up to the wedding and the baby's birth were filled with a mix of anxiety and palpable joy. Maya's belly was huge, and the anticipation of the child was the focus of all attention. Caleb, more in love than ever, never left her side, attending to every detail, ensuring her comfort and safety. He read aloud to the baby, sang lullabies, and daydreamed about the future that awaited them. The town's reconstruction was almost complete. The new homes, with their blooming gardens and welcoming porches, were a testament to the residents' resilience. The community park was ready, with swings and slides awaiting the children's laughter. Clearwater Creek rose from the ashes, stronger and more united than ever. The wedding was planned to take place in the town's new community center, a simple yet meaningful space. Residents united to decorate the venue with wildflowers, colorful ribbons, and fairy lights, transforming it into a fairy tale setting. Mrs. Louise, Caleb's mother, helped Maya choose her wedding dress, a simple and elegant design that highlighted her natural beauty and the sweetness of her pregnancy. On the morning of the wedding, the sun shone brightly, like an omen of good fortune. Maya, her heart overflowing with emotion, felt her grandfather's presence in every sunbeam, in every gentle breeze. She knew he would have been proud. Caleb, nervous but radiant, waited for her at the makeshift altar, with Jesse by his side as best man. The ceremony was simple, yet deeply moving. Maya walked towards Caleb, her gaze fixed on his, feeling life pulsate within her. Promises of love and loyalty were exchanged, and tears streamed down the guests' faces. It was more than a wedding, it was the celebration of a new life, a new family, a new community. In the middle of the celebration, however, life decided to give its own gift. Maya felt a sharp pain, a contraction that made her gasp. Caleb, attentive, noticed it immediately. "It's time," he whispered, his eyes wide with surprise and joy. Initial panic gave way to coordinated action. Jesse, with his usual calm in times of crisis, prepared the car. Caleb, with Maya in his arms, quickly took her to the nearest hospital, accompanied by Mrs. Louise and Jesse. The wedding party transformed into a race against time, but with an even grander purpose. Hours later, in a delivery room filled with emotion and tension, Maya gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. The baby's cry filled the room, and Caleb, with tears in his eyes, cut the umbilical cord, feeling an indescribable connection to his son. They named him John, in honor of Maya's grandfather, a symbol of strength, wisdom, and love. News of John's birth spread quickly through the town, transforming the wedding celebration into an even bigger party. Residents toasted to the new life, the new family, the new Clearwater Creek. While Maya recovered in the hospital, with little John nestled in her arms, Caleb received a call from Ms. Davies. The last escaped henchman had been captured, and the resources Dr. Thorne had tried to hide were tracked down and recovered. Justice, finally, was complete. With the arrest of the last criminals and the recovery of assets, the reconstruction of Clearwater Creek could be finalized with even more resources, ensuring that every family had not just a house, but a dignified and safe home. Caleb's company, now completely restructured, became an example of how financial success could go hand in hand with social responsibility. Maya and Caleb, with little John in their arms, returned to the town. Their house, one of the first to be rebuilt, was ready, full of light and a love that seemed to overflow from every corner. Caleb's family, now complete and united, awaited them with a welcome dinner, celebrating the new beginning. Life in Clearwater Creek, as the days passed, found its new rhythm. Children played in the park, neighbors helped each other, and the sound of laughter and joyful conversations filled the air. Maya and Caleb, with John in their arms, watched the town, feeling immense gratitude for all they had achieved. Caleb's belated repentance had transformed into a profound redemption, and Maya's pain, into a love that had transformed her into a strong, resilient, and happy woman. Life in Clearwater Creek, now fully rebuilt, pulsed with renewed energy. The homes, erected with care and dedication, were more than mere dwellings, they were sanctuaries, filled with stories, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. The river, clean and revitalized, reflected the blue sky, and the community park was the stage for children's games, their joyful voices filling the air, echoing the hope that had been reborn. Maya, now a strong, serene woman and mother, observed everything with a smile on her face. Little John, with his curious eyes and a toothless grin, was the personification of all the struggle and all the love she had found. He was living proof that, even after the greatest storms, life always finds a way to flourish. Caleb, by Maya's side, was a transformed man. The excessive ambition of his past had been replaced by a noble purpose and an unconditional love for his family and community. He had become a respected leader, not through power or money, but through integrity and dedication. His company, now a model of social responsibility, continued to invest in projects that benefited not only Clearwater Creek but also other underserved communities, spreading the seeds of hope and justice. Jesse, the loyal and protective friend, found his own place of peace in the new Clearwater Creek. He continued to be Caleb's right-hand man in managing community projects, and a loving uncle to little John. His presence was a constant reminder of the strength of friendship and the importance of having people to trust, especially in the most difficult moments. Caleb's family, led by Mrs. Louise, had embraced Maya and John with all their affection. Grandma's visits were always a cause for celebration, and little John was spoiled with all the love the family had saved. Maya, who had lost her mother so early and her grandfather so tragically, finally found the fullness of a large and loving family, who welcomed her with open arms. Maya's parents, who had left too soon, and her grandfather, who had fought until the end, were remembered with affection and gratitude. Their memory was no longer a source of pain, but of inspiration. Maya and Caleb's home, with its blue windows and a blooming garden, was a sanctuary of love and peace, where memories of the past mingled with promises of the future. On a sunny afternoon, Maya and Caleb sat on the porch of their new home, watching John play in the garden. The golden sun bathed the town, and the sound of children's laughter was the perfect soundtrack for that moment of peace. Caleb hugged Maya, kissing her hair. "I never imagined life could be like this, Maya," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I was blind, selfish. You showed me the true meaning of everything." Maya turned to him, her eyes full of love. "We met in the middle of the storm, Caleb. And together, we built a new sun." They kissed, a kiss that sealed not only their love but also the journey they had traveled. The pain of betrayal, the loss, the fight for justice, everything had culminated in that moment of peace and fulfillment. The final scene unfolds with Maya, now a strong and serene woman, observing the construction of her new home in the rebuilt town, with Caleb by her side and their son John in her arms. The scene is filled with the joy of Mrs. Louise and the returning residents, all working together for a prosperous future. She smiles, looking at the horizon, as Caleb embraces her, symbolizing unity, hope, and the reconstruction of a home and a community. The sun sets, painting the sky with vibrant hues, and the promise of a new day, a new beginning, hangs in the air.